For today's topic, we're gonna find out, should you open a restaurant if you wanna get rich? The short answer is no. But if you wanna understand the reasoning behind why the answer is no, then keep watching. All right, to get rich, you gotta make money. So let's figure out how much money restaurants make. All right, so most restaurants fall between the 0 and 15% net profit margin category, but most of them fall in the 3 to 5%. That means if you sell $1 million worth of product in a year, the range is about 0, obviously, to 150K. Obviously, you can lose money too, but average, that means for owning a business, if you can sell $1 million worth of product in a whole year, you make 30 to 50K on that investment. Now, this is assuming you hire everyone to do all the jobs and you don't really have to do anything. So if you put in $1 million, or not $1 million, if you build out a restaurant and you sell $1 million, this is how much profit you should take if you aren't really working, but most likely you will be working. All right, let's look at the top 100 grossing independent restaurants in the US that have less than 5 locations, so no chains. All right, this study was done in 2019. Rank 1, we have Carmine's in Times Square, which is in New York. So they grossed $39 million in 1 year. If you ate there, each person would spend an average of $40. In a year, they did 470,000 covers. So that comes out to about 1,287 covers per day. So you serve 1,300 people a day. They have 480 seats. So they're doing about 2.5 turns in each seat. A turn is how many people occupy that table throughout the night. So if you have one chair, if it has 2 turns, 2 people sat in that chair the whole night. If it has 3 turns, 3. So that's quite a lot of seats, and that's quite a lot of covers, as it should be to be number 1 in the US in 2019. So the range is 0 to 15% profit margin, but let's just call for this restaurant 10% because it's not a low-end restaurant. It's number 1 in gross volume, so it is doing pretty good. So it wouldn't be on the lower end of that, but also because you're doing so much volume, to bring the volume in, you have to have lower prices. So that's why we're gonna assume a 10% profit margin. So that means if you own this restaurant for $39 million in gross, 10%, you would simply move the decimal point, and then you would make $3.9 million. So if you can open the best restaurant in the US, and however much that costs, and run it for a long period of time, you can earn $4 million a year. Now, just think about that. The number 1 restaurant in the US made $4 million. That's very, very little money when you think of like how much money does Apple make, how much does Google make, how much does an insurance company make. 4 million for the best restaurant is absolute crap. All right, so let's be more realistic. You're not gonna open the best restaurant in terms of gross sales in the US. Let's tone it down. Let's look at rank 100, Virgil's Barbecue. So more realistic, but still very, very high. $11 million in gross sales. So they averaged $27. That's a lot less than the other restaurant, which was at 40. So $27 per cover. In a year, they did 208,000 covers, which comes out to 570 a day. That's like less than half of what number. And they have 350 seats. So again, we'll just assume a 10% margin. That means if you own the number 100th restaurant in the US, you would earn 1.4 million. And that's doing massive volume per day. So this is like, you have to manage hundreds of people and make sure things go a certain way. Overhead must be massive, and you're just doing so much work. All right, let's get more realistic. Let's figure out what an average restaurant would get if they just freshly open. All right, so if you just open a fresh new restaurant, on average, from a survey done by Toast, POS, the amount you would earn gross would be 1.342 million. And if you assume a 10% profit margin, you would make 134K. Now, that's not bad, right? Let's dive deeper into it. So you might think 134K, that's pretty good pay, but let's think about it a little. If you open this restaurant, you would average, if you're open every single day, 111 covers. If you, for rank 1 and 100, I took an average of how much you would spend per person, and it would be $33. So that means if you're doing 111 covers a day, you would need around 70 seats. So this is like a medium-sized restaurant. So to gross this much, you need a decent looking restaurant. And for a restaurant this size, we're just gonna talk about Hawaii for now. This would probably cost about $12,000 in rent, and that's gonna take at least 15 to 20 employees to run. You need a chef, you need a manager, you need dishwashers, you need all that stuff. And the startup cost for this, I would say, is somewhere around 500,000 to. So let's just assume somehow you got, we'll just meet in the middle, 750. You got 750K to open your first restaurant. Remember, success is not guaranteed. Of all of this stuff that I just showed you, there's a very high chance you fail and you lose you don't. It's not only that you don't generate income, you lose your initial investment because you go out of business and then you have debt, and yeah, you're losing money sometimes, not just not making money. All right, so you just saw this stuff that I explained. 10% profit margin, assuming you do a good job and everything goes well and whatever, and you go on TV, all that good stuff. You make 134K a year on your $750,000 investment, 10%. Now, you might have noticed this just popped up, and that's because that is the average gain in the stock market of the S&P 500 since 1957. That means in the past 80 years, if you just threw money in the stock market, you would average that much return. And this number is obviously bigger than 10%. So you do all this, you do all the work, you take all the risk and whatever, you get 10% if you do a good job. Or you invest in the stock market and you make 11.88% on average without doing any work. You just say, here's the money. And the stock market goes, okay, thank you. And you come back in 10 years and you'll get this times 10 on average, plus or minus. Another thing too is, if you have only, let's just say $5,000, you can't open a restaurant for $5,000, but you can put $5,000 into the stock market. So clearly the barrier to entry into the stock market is very low. You could even invest for $20 if you want. But for a restaurant, it's an actual business. It's gonna cost a lot, and your returns are gonna be low, and your success rate is low. So, in conclusion, should you open a restaurant to get rich? No,